and welcome to another episode of Discover with Sbenati. I'm your host, Dr. Halim Sbenati, and today we are doing an amazing episode on Discover with Sbenati. It's about money. Money. And what are we doing with our money? And how should we deal with our money? How can we get out of our debt and save our money properly and make our money work for us, not against us? If we have financial obesity, i.e. debt, how can we get rid of that? And much more. Today with us we have a very special guest. As usual, we only bring on special guests. Today's absolutely no exception. We have Rob Anderson, who is a financial advisor, a certified financial advisor, and he is going to tell us some things, some tips on what to do with our money and how to approach the whole situation. So stay tuned. Without any further ado, Rob, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us on Discover with Sbenati. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on and can't wait for your questions.
Right, and I can't wait to ask them.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go right into it.
Absolutely.
First of all, just to give a little bit of clout here, a little bit of a punch
Sure.
from yourself to the audience.
Okay.
How long have you been doing the financial advising for?
Yeah, great question. I'm now in my 6th year.
Nice.
Came right out of school, so I took finance first. Which was great. I graduated with all my licensing, and I was able to start my practice right away.
Nice. Okay, yeah. 6 years under your belt.
Yes.
And you deal with clients that range from, in terms of income-wise, range from income of as low as and as high as?
Yeah, I mean, incomes can be, anywhere, 50s, 60s to certainly in the hundreds, 250s plus.
Okay.
It really depends. Whether it's a professional or business owner, we're talking different types of incomes as well. Okay. Whether it's personal, corporate, your average family as well, can certainly have their incomes too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you deal with a wide range of incomes.
Yes.
Which is perfect, okay? Because I'm sure people that are watching also have a wide range of incomes as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're a financial advisor. So what does it mean to be a financial advisor? Is it someone who basically tells you how to make more money, how to manage your money, how to invest your money properly, how to not evade, but rather how to strategize against paying more taxes? What does a financial advisor do? What's the role?
Yeah, and sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions as well as far as what we do, right? Myself and our firm, Aspire Financial Group, we really like to differentiate ourselves, certainly from the banks, if you will, where, it's all about product. What is the product? When really it's about the client or the couple or the business, figuring out what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And then really getting down to the details, the nitty-gritty. Where is your money going? So understanding your cash flow. You mentioned debt. Understanding what that looks like, from an income standpoint. Okay. How much tax are you paying? What is your marginal tax rate? And really explaining all those aspects, and then we really take all that information, and it's a multi-meeting process usually. We take that back, and we've got software as well as other professionals that we lean on to really come up with a full plan that actually lays it out for the client with projections and also recommendations on what they need to be doing to really help them identify, where they're on track for, where there might be some gaps, and where there are some opportunities for them to really take advantage of.
So you're talking about a big picture then, because you're looking at the huge financial picture of the individual or the business or the couple or the family, and then you're tying all that together in a multi-meeting process to see how they can maximize their income potential.
Yes, maximize all their resources.
Got you.
Right, we want to be efficient,
Yeah.
and our job isn't really to also assume that somebody wants to retire with a large income. It may be something else that they're looking to do. And it's really to listen and be careful, really detailed as far as what they're saying to us, and then make sure we touch on that when we make recommendations.
Right. Okay, great. So how about you give us some tips? So let's say I'm let's say I'm a student.
Okay.
And
Yep.
I'm a student. I have obviously I have my tuition to pay for. I have my residence to pay for. I have there's little food, my cell phone, stuff like that. Nothing
Yeah.
huge.
Sure.
Okay. I'm working. I'm making around, let's say, $20,000
Okay.
a month.
Yeah.
What's your advice for a student of that nature in terms of how can they manage their money properly so that they're not killing themselves when they graduate?
Yes. Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up, and I think a lot of that comes down to let's start at a budget, right?
Okay.
Really understanding, okay, what are your fixed expenses? Literally writing those out word for word and dollar for dollar. What are they? Add that up, and then actually giving yourself an amount that you're going to spend, because being a student, there's probably some entertainment and fun you want to have too.
Right.
As well, if you've got student debt that's building up, or what have you, you may have a credit card, trying to be responsible with that while also building up a credit score in history that's going to help you later on. When life happens and you want to try to buy a house later on, you want to be in a strong financial position at that point.
Okay. So you're saying in order for someone to basically not screw themselves over,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if they're a student or not, that's the vibe that I'm getting, is to know what their fixed expenses are.
Yes, they're fixed, and then figure out a budget for their variable expenses.
Right.
And looking back, month over month can start, for them to figure out some patterns, and then maybe make some adjustments as far as, I really am spending too much in this category.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's to be very, very cognizant on
Yes.
what they're spending, their fixed and their variable expenses, and then make adjustments on their variable and maybe even their fixed
And they're
expenses.
fixed, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's sound advice. So let's say you encounter now an early professional. So someone graduated,
Sure.
they started working, now they're making around, let's say, $50,000, $60,000 a month, and they're looking into what the heck do I do with my money? Do I just pay off the debt right away? Do I invest? Or
Yeah.
do I do both? What should I do?
Yeah, and in that particular situation, you may be talking about someone who's completed extra schooling, so maybe is a little older, and at that stage, maybe at that ideal age for buying a home and things like that, and so paying off or trying to pay off all their debt and not do anything else is going to inhibit some of those life goals that they have, right? Home ownership. If they run into an emergency where they need funds for something, if it's an OSAP debt or a student debt of some kind, once you're done school, you can't re-borrow on that, right? If that comes up. So if you're socking away all your money, so basically putting all your eggs in one basket, that's going to leave you in a tough situation. So making sure some money set aside for emergencies. Also looking at that time, you're starting to get into an income where, tax is starting to add up as far as what you're paying. So maybe we can put some money away for retirement that can allow you to receive some money back when you file your taxes. That money could even then be used for a down payment in the future through other programs that are available to you.
Wow. So there's a lot of things that you just pulled out just from that question. A lot of different variables.
Yes.
Many different variables.
Yes.
Like if you're looking to buy a house, if you have emergency funds, if you're looking to do something else, and you have a lot of resources, it looks like, in the back of your mind to know where to pull those from.
Yes. Well, yes, and that's kind of why people really do need somebody to talk to, right? That can make them aware of those situations. And everyone's not going to be the same, so everyone's not going to necessarily have the same plan. But once someone's aware, they can make that then educated decision. And for me, I can know that, I've done my job as well, and have them succeed.
That's awesome.
Which is
okay.
great.
So you're talking about emergency funds. So what's the percentage of someone's income should they reserve for emergency funds?
Yeah, so we typically base it off of, like a 3 months salary, for example.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you have that much available. Now, different experts may have different opinions on that as far as, should it be all in cash, or can some of that just be an available line of credit, or some combination? Because at some point, if you've got a higher income, that's going to be a lot of money just sitting there available to you. So, or do you invest a little bit in some low risk investments, just so you're earning something on your money, because you may not have an emergency for a while as well. You don't want things like inflation and all that to eat into it. So,
right. So then, what would you advise? Like, would you advise someone to do a low risk investment, or would you advise someone to go into like just put it in cash, or what would you advise?
Yes. So, I mean, if we're just talking general, and somebody had all of the means, probably the perfect situation would be some in a savings account that's very quick to access in case of that emergency. Some available in a line of credit, perhaps, that, if it's not being used, that's fine. You won't be charged. And then a portion available in a tax-free savings account, where it can be invested for, the short or medium term.
Okay. So then why not put everything into a tax-free savings account?
Well, because the tax-free savings account is so all-encompassing that we're likely using the TFSA or tax-free savings account for multiple goals. So part of that can be emergency fund, and the rest could be to help with a down payment, or to help for retirement. We use the tax-free savings account for all sorts of, or travel. There are all sorts of things that someone can use the TFSA for.
And there's no downfall in putting money into just a savings account?
The only thing you'd have to be mindful of is the interest, and then eventually reporting it. But as far as if it's only a small amount and it's simply for emergency funds, that's okay.
Okay. And what about depreciation? Right, because they have inflation, and the money that you put in is not going to mean as much as when you want to take it out if you leave it there for a while. So would you take that into consideration in terms of leaving it into savings, or would you put it into something that's going to give you some kind of return to combat the inflation? Yeah,
and that's partly why we're talking small amount. Any additional money, of course, is going to start to go into other types of investments, RSPs, things that are going to allow you to earn a much larger return on investment or tax savings.
Okay.
But you're definitely not missing out in the big picture, if it's only a small amount.
Okay. Yeah. So what about for someone who wants to, let's say, give, I don't know, like a certain portion of their money, they want to give it to some kind of charity. Is there a benefit to doing that? Is there a tax benefit to doing that? Or is that just something that, the ultra rich say that they do because that's what rich people do, and that's what people should be doing? Like, is there any benefit to putting away like 10 or 20% towards charity or to give to the needy?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that question, because it's starting to become more and more on the minds of people today. And it's different for everybody, and there are a lot of different ways you can do it. On a small scale, I know even myself, I have monthly recurring contributions to a couple charities that are close to me, just on my credit card that I pay off every month, and I get a tax receipt at the end of the year and receive the tax credit applicable for charitable donations. So if someone's looking for a place to start, that's a great way, obviously.
Okay.
On a more bigger scale, depending on where you're at in life, there's some great ways as far as, being able to leave a big legacy, when you die, for example. And there are different ways with life insurance where you can assign a death benefit to a charity of your choice. And you can receive some tax benefits while you're alive for actually paying the premiums. Or you can leave a portion of your estate as far as, when you work with your lawyer on your will. You can gift securities. There's a lot of interesting ways that can either have tax benefits throughout your life or at the end of your life from an estate point of view.
Right. Okay. Now, along those lines, I know that the secret to wealth, well, one of them, and I'm sure you can correct me, is to invest early and to diversify your investments. Now, some people say that you should invest around at least 10%. Some people say 20% is that magic number. Some people say more than 20%. Do you think that from a financial advisor point of view, do you think that is realistic for someone that's making, let's say, $60,000 and they have a family, for you to say, well, just tax yourself 20% and you'll adjust, but then over time, let's say 20 years down the road, you're gonna thank yourself that you actually did that. Is that realistic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and typically I do like rules of thumb. I mean, they're good, ways to start to look at, saving and building up the mindset that you need to be successful at it. And then really it comes down to actually looking at the details and, how much income do you want to have in retirement, and then work backwards from that. What's that number have to be, and then how much do I need to contribute, and then start somewhere, and we can always build that up. But 25 years ago when The Wealthy Barber was written, a famous book on finance, which I recommend people check out if they haven't, it used to be 10% to save. Certainly times have changed. We have less support as far as retirement from our employers these days. It's very expensive in costs. So in his second iteration of his book, talked about 20%. And so, if you're going to go off by rule of thumb, that'd be great if you could do that. But really it comes down to, like I said before, figuring out how much you're going to need in the future and working that backwards to today, and then starting somewhere and working your way up.
And who would they contact? Would they contact someone like you for to figure those numbers out, or would they do it by themselves?
Yeah, so someone could always, so if someone's an Excel guru or something like that, they can go and create projections. But certainly we do that with our clients. So if somebody actually you wanted to go through the process, obviously we're willing to help. I think it gives people confidence, because otherwise, they're putting money away. They don't really know, what that's going to look like in the future. They know the government has some benefits, Canada Pension Plan, old age security, but what does that look like? I got this group RSP at work. What does that mean? I've got my own savings.
It's good to have someone that actually knows all this stuff.
Yes.
Hence a financial advisor. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, so now people are listening in and they're like, okay, this sounds really good. What's it going to cost someone to have a financial advisor? Because I'm thinking this is a long-term thing. It's not like, oh, hey, give me some advice, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing you're going to be managing their money. They're going to be managing, what they're going to spend on. You're going to give them advice, stuff like that.
Yes.
So what does that look like in terms of investment?
Yeah. So you talk about cost and and it's different in all industries, right? Where someone may be used to, if they go see their lawyer, or they may even be afraid to seek legal advice because of the cost up front. Whereas in the financial industry, there are different types of advisors or different type of fee structures where you could see a fee only or a advisor where you actually pay up front for a financial plan, and that's what you get. And then you're left to making all the other decisions for as far as what you invest in or products on your own. I think there's some pros and cons with that, but what most people work with is an advisor that will work on a percentage of your assets that you invest, whether that's a fee directly coming off the account every month or quarter, or whether that's a fee embedded into the actual products themselves. Depending on the amount of assets you have, that might be the easiest way to access the advice, because even though there's a lot of work in the beginning for the advisor, if the client had to pay for all of that up front, they may not go ahead and work through that, but the advisor will take the chance and work with the client through that, knowing that it's going to be an ongoing relationship, and in the long run, they're vested in the client's success based on their assets growing. The advisor's compensation would grow in that situation.
Right.
So,
and is there a set fee with regards to how financial advisors set their fees?
So there are standards, and then more and more now we're seeing, depending on, and every practice is going to be different, or every institution, but you can typically negotiate fees. So we have it for some clients, with X amount of assets, maybe we'll do a lower fee. Or maybe there's other family members in the household, or there may be other lines of business that we have with them, whether we also do employee benefits. So if they have a business, that might be something that we consider as well. And it's a situational situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does someone find a fiduciary, like a financial advisor that acts on their behalf as opposed to acting on their own behalf or for their own benefit?
Yeah, so probably the best way to start is actually looking through something like, it's now called FP Canada,
Okay.
so it's Financial Planners of Canada, and you can actually look for a fee-based advisor in that situation, or simply Googling financial advisor can certainly help you find an advisor and any of the other fee models that are more common, and people might be used to.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So FP Canada.
Yeah.
They give you a list of who's certified in terms of financial advising and what kind of financial advisors they are.
Yeah, and you can look in your area as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to get out of debt and they really want to get out of debt? What is your, let's say, top 3 steps for getting out of debt? Rob's top 3 tips for getting out of debt. Let's do that one more time. Rob Anderson's top 3 tips for getting out of debt. There you go.
Yeah, definitely, a topic discussion, certainly in the news a lot as well. When you look at all these surveys talking about Canadians in debt, so I definitely get it a lot, and it's a part of our financial planning process that we do. So if we look at the number 1 tip and kind of where you need to start, is actually listing out your debt. Figuring out, okay, what are your interest rates that you're paying? What are your required payments? And then, hopefully you would have already gone through a budget and your cash flow. We'd look at some of your other goals and figure out how much we can allocate to debt and how much hopefully extra is there. And then really start to tackle, okay, what is that highest interest debt that we could put majority of the resources towards. We want to pay that debt off first. So that's definitely going to be the first area. And then as we, if there are multiple debts, or maybe there is only one debt, but if there's multiple, if we can get, that first debt paid off, we can then use the money that you're already used to paying for the debt that you paid off and start applying that to the next debt. As well. Hopefully we're saving for retirement while doing that too. And, for someone's RSP contributions, when they receive their tax return, hopefully we can dump that on one of their debts as well. So that would be the second one, right? Can we take the resources and kind of move them around, right? As far as achieving their goals, paying down the debt, and then taking this influx from tax time after you file, put that on the debt. And that'll certainly speed up the process to becoming debt-free. And then the third one, and it may not be needed in all situations or be available to people in all situations, but some sort of sometimes a debt consolidation or home prices have certainly gone up. So we are seeing people, taking advantage of that, paying out their debt and rolling it into their mortgage. For sure, it does increase the balance of their mortgage. Usually mortgages right now are at good interest rates. But then we encourage them to pay more than they're required on their mortgage, so that they either stay on schedule, but at least all that debt outside of the mortgage is cleared up. It usually really helps with the cash flow, and we can hopefully speed up their process to becoming financially free.
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot. That's a lot, because you talked about first knowing what your debt is. Okay, and knowing which part is the biggest debt and what the interest rate is.
Yes.
Then you said the second part is to see what you can gather in terms of savings from or returns from the government, from tax returns and RSP returns.
Yeah, any influx of cash.
Right.
Yeah.
And putting that directly into debt. And the third, you're talking about consolidations or remortgaging or whatever it is you have to do in order for someone to get a little bit more leverage with their money, so they can pay off, I'm guessing, the higher interest rate debts. And then now they have a mortgage, but then now they have to think about paying more into the mortgage, so that they're staying on time in terms of finishing off paying the mortgage.
Yes, and then they could increase savings too, and in the long run.
And you guys would manage all of that, right? You guys would manage all of that in terms of giving them advice, do this, do that, invest here, do this, stuff like that, right?
Yep. Yeah, we either work directly or we'll work with your other professionals that you work with, whether that's your mortgage broker, accountant,
right.
You name it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything that you want to tell our lovely audience before we go?
Sure. We've talked a lot about investing. We've talked about debt. I think another important aspect, and it can be missed, is looking at what if something happened. Whether it's a sudden illness, injury, or sudden death. In that aspect. So, part of the financial plan, we can plan for 30 years from now, and you being successful. But if there's an interruption along the way, everything falls apart, right? So we need to make sure, one, your income's protected. So if you did get sick or injured, there's still money coming into the household, right? Whether that's an influx of cash, if you get sick, or it's a monthly replacement of income from a disability coverage. Those are really important pieces, especially one if there's one income earner, but certainly if there's two, because you're used to that lifestyle. And if there's one thing that we want to avoid is having to sell the house and move out into an apartment, or having to dip into your retirement savings, and there's tax consequences, and what if the market's down, and so all those things that from a risk standpoint we want to make sure are at least addressed and figured out. As well, if there's a death as well, we want to make sure from a life insurance standpoint, as far as what you want to have happen, there's enough money there. So whether that's paying out the mortgage or replacing part of your spouse's income that you'll need to raise the family, or make sure that their education is still paid for, and having those conversations as well. Because once we figure out everything they're looking to do, we want to also make sure that, God forbid if something happened, there's a plan B.
Right. That's awesome. That's actually really important.
It is,
to protect yourself in case something does happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. It was fantastic. It was very, very informative. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Very informative.
Wasn't it very good? I thought it was very, very informative. I know that because if he pays attention that means it's very informative. If he doesn't pay attention, that means it's boring. And today he paid 100% attention, so it was good. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Discover with Sbenati. This was an amazing episode. Tune in to another one. It's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait to see you soon. We will be posting the website and any kind of social media tags for Rob in case you have any questions, if you want to contact him or whatever. I'm sure you do. He's based out of London, Ontario, but I'm sure he can take in questions from anywhere. So I'll get you guys the information so you guys can get a hold of him in the description box below on YouTube, and also be linking that on social media. So thank you again for listening. For those that are listening, walking the dog or going to the gym or whatever, thanks for listening on the podcast. And thank you, YouTube, and we'll see you guys soon.